They can come in anytime you go online. They can come in across the network and penetrate your system and drain everything you have that's used decrypted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you can't do
Remember all
anything.
the
And then
remember all the hardware backdoors and everything else that we read about over the last couple of years. That's what.
and then there are ways then they could use that to go back at the encryption. So
Just because you retweeted, Epstein doesn't mean you were one of his clients. But the point is that the NSA has the telecommunications side that will have the content that is absolutely unmentionable publicly.
Quick break from the program to share with you something amazing. This is called Sloop. It's actually SLUPP-332, but it's been shortened to Sloop. And this thing mimics exercise. It seems too good to be true. I first shared this on my Substack, and I had Dr. Diane Kaiser, and we went through all the benefits of this, and the whole thing sold out. You can't get it anywhere really across the industry. And the people who are using it the most are athletes and bodybuilders and people who want to see extra performance in athletics, because this and preclinical studies with mice increased their endurance by 70% and their distance by 45%. I mean, it's incredible. And it's been shown to mimic exercise even when you're at rest. In preclinical studies with obese mice, they lost upwards of 12% of their body weight in 4 weeks, and it increased muscle. So this is really taking the industry by storm. It's actually not that expensive either. With my 10% coupon, it's about $80 for maybe a 2-month supply if you take 1 capsule a day. If you decide to up it to 2 capsules a day, because your dosage depends on what you want, then it's a 1-month supply. But Dr. Diane recommends doing 1 capsule a day until your body gets used to it. You might not see the same level of results right away that the mice did, but your body can get used to it and see if it's something that you really want to do. If you are interested in this, I will have a link below so you can try it yourself, or go to sarahwestall.com under shop. Remember to use the code Sarah to save 10%. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have the notorious whistleblower from the NSA, Bill Binney, and his wife, Dr. Katherine Horton, who is a CERN scientist and really brilliant on her own. This show is going to be bombshell after bombshell, and we bring up the whole Epstein thing that just happened, which is ridiculous, but a lot of other things that you probably don't know about, as far as we talk about Thin Thread, his original program with the NSA that was developed as far back as 1997. We tie in Palantir, show you or explain to you the theory of what's really going on, how that ties to big tech, how Google was started. We really go there on a lot of issues, and I talk about some of my own involvement and with the Epstein, and hopefully you'll learn a lot from this. We got serious interference during this interview, and they ask that I keep this in so that you understand the kind of interference we get when we do these really important shows. I asked my editor to clean it up a little bit because it was too much, but you'll get a good idea of the kind of interference that we were dealing with during the show. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we have still the 4th of July huge peptide sale going on until July 10th. You can save 20% on most peptides. So the retatrutide, the really, really powerful weight loss, that's more powerful than Ozempic. It works on 3 different categories. One of the most not just suppresses appetite, but it also works to burn fat. Plus, I recommend people taking muscle mass, preserving muscle mass, other peptides that do that, like 5-amino-MQ and Sloop, which Sloop is back in stock too, which is an exercise mimicker. It increases longevity and endurance. It's incredible. Athletes are taking it by storm. That has been out of stock almost the entire time. I first came out with it. It was out of stock it was in stock for like 3 weeks and out of stock. It came back in and only for 3 weeks out of stock. Now it's in stock. They've ramped up their production facilities, so hopefully it'll be in stock longer. I recommend getting more than 1 bottle if you are interested in trying it. It is now 20% off. If you use directly from your bank account, you can also get an additional 5% off. I will have the links. You have to use my coupon code Sarah to get those discounts, but I'll have the links below. I also have links to my website where I have the ultimate peptide guide on weight loss. There's other peptides when it comes to helping you with anti-aging and with energy and mitochondria development. And it's just an incredible field. This is feeling better as you age. And I'm one of those, I want to feel great as I age. I don't want to I don't want my knees to hurt. I don't want my back to hurt. I want to feel great. And I think all of us should be. And it's bringing this so it's accessible to average people. And instead of just the uber rich, it is more affordable. It's still something that you're going to invest in. I mean, honestly, you got to invest in this on a monthly basis so that you keep up with it, but it's accessible now. It's just not for the wealthy. Anyways, I'll have all the links below, so look for that. And remember to do a thumbs up, to subscribe, and to subscribe to my newsletter, which is my Substack. I'll have links for all of that below. Okay, let's get into this this is an explosive interview with Bill Binney and Dr. Katherine Horton. Hi, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Hello, nice to have us on,
Good to be
Sarah.
back.
I'm really excited to have you. There's those of us that have been talking for years. I know I've had Bill on my show for many years. And Katherine, I feel like I know you, with everything that's gone on. We just talked about that before. But okay, we got to talk about the surveillance. We have a lot of topics we're going to talk about. The surveillance and the fact that the massive surveillance, track and trace, all these software operations have been going on for decades. To me, Palantir feels like a psyop of some sort. I want to ask you first, start with what you did with Thin Thread, NSA. You're the notorious whistleblower from the NSA. Can you talk about what Thin Thread was? And then I want to get into putting Palantir into context so people understand. But first, let's talk about Thin Thread and what you did.
Well, Thin Thread came in basically two parts. The first part was acquisition of information on the internet, basically, because it was packetized and you had to pull the packets back together to reconstruct what was being sent, like an email or short messages or whatever, some kind of picture or something. You had to pull all those packets back together, and you had to do it at fiber optic rates, which was pretty fast. Like each line had 155 megabits, and you could have the data coming down multiple lines. So you had to be able to look at the entire trunk line, like a 10 gigabit line, and be able to pull it all out and put it back together. And that was being done by Ed Loomis. He ran that part of the SART. He was doing the front end acquisition, and he succeeded at that point, or his people did, in 1997.
1990. Well, now were those because I know I came out of telecom and the NSA servers were in with the other servers. It was all parallel systems. Was that coming out of those servers, or where was that data coming from?
It was coming from the taps on the fiber optic lines around the world.
Okay.
So it was, and it's grown. I don't think there's very much they miss on the world network.
It's all there. Yeah. They just tap all of it.
But the point was that produced massive amounts of data. So then there are analysts in the back end. That's where I was, figuring out how to manage large volumes of data or massive amounts of data. And it became very clear how to do it. It was like the old time religion of doing metadata type analysis, which is basically what we did in the Soviet against the Soviet Union and other targets in the world, looking at attributes of organizations and pulling the relationships together. So that was like a metadata index, distributed storage, profile development of not just of individual nodes or people on the line, but also the networks on the line, so that you could pull all this information together and do it in a matter of seconds for any target you wanted in the world and for any period of time you wanted. I mean,
it's from 1997, just so people get an idea of how long this tech. Okay, keep going.
Right. And the point was that could be done for any period of time. The longer period of time, it took the machine a few seconds longer every time you added another week or a month, So it'd take another couple of seconds to do that month. But that's basically it. You could get an answer on it pretty much right away. So that's why I said they had a profile on everybody on the planet in this database, because anything coming in The point was we use B tree indexing. I don't know. Let me explain that. If you had something coming in and you had a relationship between A and B, a phone call, an email, financial transfer, whatever,
It was
it's a way of indexing information to B, and then you double index it by saying B has a relationship from A, so that you only index and sort one column, alpha, numeric alpha, and then pull out any one item. Then if you pull out, I want to see what everything that B is doing, get it all from that sort. B to A and A from A to B. It all comes out that one sort. That's why you don't have to search two lines, which will be scrambled on the other side if you did alphanumeric sort. You see,
it's just a quicker way to do a sorting algorithm so that you don't have to. Yeah. So and they could do this. Since they can tap, and they tapped all the fiber optic lines around the world. Yep. Is there anything at this point that they can't tap?
I'm sure there are remote portions that, like in Siberia or somewhere. It's kind of remote and it's hard to get to. But a lot of it was done by infecting equipment sold around the world. That is, if they sold a switch or a server, they would implant hardware or software or both in it, and then they showed in the material that was published from Edward Snowden, showed that NSA stopped the transit of switches from Cisco, I think it was, around the world to somebody, and I can't remember who that was, but they stopped it in transit, implanted their material in it, then closed it up and sent it on. So that meant the person that got it then they didn't know what they were implementing, but they were helping to implement the tapping system of NSA.
That's right.
They implement that in their network, and then that now became they were now just another element in the tapping system of NSA.
Okay, let me ask you: is there any technology like Signal or any kind of encrypted technology that keeps the NSA out?
I don't think so, but most of it goes through NIST, National Scientific Intelligence Testing, something like that.
National Institute for Scientific
Testing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, science and technology.
It has to they have certain requirements. You have to meet certain.
I asked you. You started explaining what NIST was. Can you explain that?
Should we say hello to the FBI?
Yeah,
exactly.
Because
I keep telling them they have a terrible tap. Yeah. They should fix it.
You should keep this in, Sarah, because they always sabotage it. Key points, and the key point. Sorry, I had to leave to talk to somebody, but the key point is that there is nothing that people can use that's safe from the NSA, and that's because if you use something encrypted, it's like a red flag to a bull. It's the only thing in this huge data stream they can't read, so they will go in by other means and basically break it by other means.
See, the point is, if they have something they can't read, they can come in anytime you go online. They can come in across the network and penetrate your system and drain everything you have that's used decrypted.
Yeah, so that you can't do anything.
Remember all the hardware backdoors and everything else that we read about in the last couple of years. That's what.
And then there are ways then they could use that to go back at the encryption. So.
Okay, well then let's let's talk about Palantir, because I know all this is in place. All this stuff has been in place for decades. And then all of a sudden, there's all these black projects, like ThinThread was a black project. So all these black projects, Snowden came out with it. I know you were infamously in the Snowden movie as Nicolas Cage. So yeah, that's funny. But so all this stuff has been around, and all of a sudden Palantir comes out and they're super public and everybody's talking about them. To me, it feels fishy. Like, what is going on? We've been talking about this for decades. All this stuff is in place. All the whistleblowers, you and Snowden and Kirk Wiebe and all these people have come out talking about all this. And then all of a sudden Palantir is going to take over the world. It seems like the world's already been taken over. So what is going on?
It's decades of conditioning, but they condition the population to accept less privacy over time. That's fundamentally what they're doing, but they're doing it.
So, yes.
It's basically how many different ways and how much can you gain in terms of assembling information about people? Well, that gives you control over those people. And I've said from the beginning, this is all about population control.
That's right.
It's like,
One tidbit that viewers might be interested to hear was your insight about the Dutch police's
oh, yeah,
experience.
I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, well, see, we ran into Palantir when we were trying to, Kirk Wiebe and I were trying to form a company over in Netherlands to try to get the concept of the one thing that's missing as far as I can see in Palantir is the full automation of the analysis of data and presenting the results of that analysis to the analysts, or actually to the people who are actually going to execute anything if they need to stop crime or whatever. So the point is, it's automating analysis, the analysis process, not just simply putting together a nice picture, sorting and grouping things and making a picture of the data. That's not the whole point. The Dutch police had a requirement that they told us about for Palantir, and that's why they spent over 10 million for it at the time. They were a bit ticked, I would say, because it didn't produce what they needed. It didn't solve their problem. They wanted to know in all of the commercially available communications that they could see when people were going to have a demonstration or going to have some kind of violent attacks or whatever inside their country. And Palantir, they bought it on a premise, I guess they thought it would do that. And they had some very choice words about it, but I won't mention those words here. It basically failed. And what they did was they then looked at us as the next version of a snake oil salesman. We're coming in here trying to sell them a technology thing, okay? It's going to fail and they're going to spend millions on it, just waste it. And it's just another wasteful technology endeavor that fails.
well, I guess if I may interject, what really kind of opened my eyes to what we're dealing with here is that just the Dutch police's expense in buying Palantir, which is just a license really, was 10 million. Now the whole development, implementation and deployment of ThinThread was
3 sites.
yeah, because 3 sites was $3 million.
3.2.
But once it's there, once
Yeah.
it's built, you can uncover anything with it, child trafficking, drug trafficking, anything. So for the average person in the street, $3 million sounds like a lot, but the Secret Service just spent $2 million on a Super Bowl ad. So basically for a TV advert and a half, you built ThinThread from scratch and deployed it, and you could have uncovered terrorism activity, child trafficking, whatever you set the selectors to do, it would have pulled it out for you for $3 million into perpetuity.
So basically on Monday, they could figure out who all the child traffickers are. By the end of the week, they could be rounded up and put into
and
prison.
done. And the point is that when Bill can explain how quick it was, when you actually so you pick out the pattern that you're looking for, and when you set it, it pulled it out in moments for the world.
Actually, 3 seconds was the minimum, basically, that we would.
And that's why you're targeted. That's why you were targeted, because and those of us who've been covering this, we know what's really going on, and they don't want this information getting out. Tell me if you agree. It feels like the surveillance coming out with Palantir, to me, feels like the Space Force coming out. Like there was this secret space program, and then suddenly they created Space Force because all the journalists and everybody was talking about how there's this secret program going on for decades. Then all of a sudden they created Space Force, and then nobody talked about it anymore. It's almost as if they're ready to come out publicly with all the surveillance and just say, this is the reality of what we're doing.
That
yes, kind of feels like it to me.
This is really a military back, yeah, and it's being run by NSA. So, NSA is the manager of all the data.
Yes.
Because if you remember, some of the release, the FISA court release of that one request to Verizon to turn over all their data to NSA, that was requested by the FBI. But the NSA is managing the data so that the FBI can query it. And without any oversight, by the way. There's no oversight of that. That's how they got 250,000 violations of the FISA law last year. And I think that number is quite low. Could be 10 times that.
If they were serious.
Yeah.
I think the best way to look at Palantir and actually the entire intelligence community is as a huge money siphoning operation. They create
Yeah.
these front organizations. They never achieve anything. And the American taxpayer has to understand that all of their organized crime and terrorism and anything has already been bought and paid for. ThinThread was already paid for with $3 million. It's a one-off expense. And to understand the scale, one has to really think through what you're trying to pick out. If you think about child trafficking or pedophilia, for example, a pedophile, maybe it's innate, genetic, whatever, but a pedophile is born, it takes a couple of, a decade and a half until they get sexually active. And then they're a pedophile. But once you've identified them, that's it. There's like a latency before the next pedophile comes online, if you like. So if you have a software, you already have this massive surveillance of the world set up. It's already paid for by the taxpayer. It's highly illegal, but it's already there. You can go through and use ThinThread to pull out legitimate, criminal investigations and pull out these people. Once you pull them out, that is it.
Well, that's it. But the problem is the blackmail operations are engaged upon by the elites and the intelligence organizations.
That's why they cover it
for
up.
a control, yes, because that's their control mechanism. So they can't use it for that. And we're in this hellscape because they're so hell bent on keeping their blackmail and coercion operations going.
What Bill has the solution to all of that.
As an example with the Epstein case, in Twitter alone, just the Twitter aspect, Epstein was on Twitter. If you looked at just the people who retweeted his tweets, that is people who, I guess, favored his activity or whatever he was doing.
His fan club.
His fan club, which also helped outline his customers, say. Okay.
Yeah. His social network.
Let's say his social network, his customers. Just that alone, with another fellow used another program to pull it together on Twitter. There's over 1,000 people in a Twitter connection with him. Well, who did retweets of his tweets.
Yeah.
Not just receiving.
Yeah. Well, this is just, I would say, a public example of how easily you can identify somebody's social network.
That's right.
Because just because you retweeted, Epstein doesn't mean you were one of his clients. But the point is that the NSA has the telecommunications side that will have the content that is absolutely unmentionable publicly, right? The really horrific stuff. And the thing about these pedophiles is that they're gloating openly about it. So sometimes certain charities have quoted pedophile chatter from these websites and these, chat platforms, and it is extremely graphic. So if you just pull out that and you map these people, every new person you identify is a lead to their social network to identify all these pedophiles. So if you think about an algorithm just going through and pulling these out, you can understand how quickly it can be done. But once you've done it and you map these pedophiles for the US, you're done on Monday. So on Tuesday, you can pull out the drug trafficking operation that supplies the continental width of the United States. And the thing is, when you have the FBI supposedly working for decades, Monday to Sunday, right? Continue Monday to Friday, just churning away. The question is, what the actual F are they doing? They should have been done by Friday, right? And after that, it's just a monitoring operation. And the total cost with the database already in place is $3 million. That's the tool. So what are these hundreds of billions of dollars flowing to the intelligence community? And that's where your blackmail operations come in.
That's
how many billionaires and millionaires? Yeah. But the point is that the software I left them in 2001 actually was developed in 1998 after Ed got all that stuff coming in. Ed Loomis, that software gave the social network of everybody that was input. That means everybody on the planet that's using a phone or an email or whatever. Everybody.
Yes. So they have it all, and they just know. So what do you think of Pam Bondi? And that just happened today, right before we got on this interview. This is going to air tomorrow, where she said that, and so did Dan Bongino and Kash Patel said that the client list doesn't exist. I mean, how BS is that? What do you think of that?
I mean, from Twitter alone, I pulled out with this other fellow doing it, pulled out the relationship of at least 1,000 members of his 1,000 potential customers, let's say.
Well, John Mark Dugan, who I've had on my show, we worked together closely on a couple of the projects because he helped save my website when the Federal Crimes Division took it down because I'm such a criminal. I mean, my God, it's crazy. But the MI, when he was helping whistleblowers in Florida, the investigators gave him all the Epstein tapes, the video files, and he kept it for them. And he notoriously had to flee to Russia where he got asylum. And MI6 learned about the fact that he had those videos, and they tipped off the Times of London. And he had a reporter, an investigative journalist, came and looked at those tapes with him, and it confirmed that he had them, right? And then I interviewed him. This was back in 2017 or something, and he talked about what 8 of the videos had on there, because they only watched 8 of them because it grossed them. At a certain point, they felt icky just watching them. And they said one of them had a girl taking a shower. The other ones were all older men having sex with which looked like younger underage girls. And I asked him if he recognized anybody on the tapes. And he said he recognized 2 of them. He wouldn't tell me who one of the people was. He just didn't feel comfortable. But the other person was the head of MSNBC at the time. Yeah. And I mean, that's the kind of blackmail they were doing with these people. And he had a dead man switch. He gave out these tapes to 10 different people around the world because he was worried. And because I asked him, why didn't you give these to the FBI?
You just cut again. Can you just say what you just said? After you said dead man switch, that's when you go, oh, wow. The internet. Cut again. Yeah, we're getting a message that the internet connection is unstable. There are too many intel agents sitting on this line, Sarah.
I can imagine. Okay, well, he was worried that they would learn about and kill him, right? Dugan was worried about it. So he has a dead man switch on these videos, and rightfully so. Anybody connected with this thing are getting axed. And he has 10 different people with copies of these videos. And I said, why don't you release them? He goes, why should I have to release them, risk my life, when the FBI is sitting on them the whole time? I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't know what to say to that. But was his response. And so now when Pam Bondi comes out after I have that background and that information, and comes out and says there's no client list, it's really infuriating.
Yeah, are you back? Because otherwise we have a high definition video of you that's flawless, and then it gets cut very cleanly. At certain keywords, it just truncates. When you said Pam Bondi, it just went dead. So dead man switch and Pam Bondi, that's these 2 things, and you were just gone.
Well, let's see if what they do to this video when we air it. At least it's recording locally, so my recording is going to happen.
Yeah. But you should leave this in because this is evidence of them sitting on our line. Now, I should also say the laptop that I'm using, I took it to my IT guy twice.
This is a good connection. I usually don't have problems, people. So, and like they were saying.
The FBI is making their tap really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really clear. I was on Dave Janda's show, who's also very targeted. And during that time when we were coming out with all the election, and you were the hammer and the scorecard, they were cutting me live off the radio and really screwing with all of us.
They are basically messing around. So I'm going to say it again. I'm going to just keep repeating it. And please leave all this in because it just puts, an emphasis on what we're saying. You can see these are the pain points of the FBI. So my file on my computer that links to an IP address, not the file directory. The IP address linked to the state capital and then Washington, D.C.
Well, I don't know what she was talking about her laptop going in, and that it was connected to the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Correct? Yeah. Could you guys hear me? Okay. That's what you're trying to tell people when you went in and showed your laptop. So you guys, I want to talk, I did, a 5-part, I've done many, I did 3 different conferences on censored, where I brought in all the censored people from all different aspects of the political spectrum. And I had, generals on, I had whistleblowers on, I had all sorts of people on. It was a really great conference. And then I also did a 10-part series on mind control, and you were part of that, Bill. And then I did a 10-part series on mind control and 5th generation warfare. And I grabbed part of your interview from the censored conference. So I've done a lot of this, trying to expose this, but you have too, from exposing all this, you've been targeted. You found yourself one of the most targeted people on the planet, and you keep suffering through that. Can you explain kind of what you've gone through? Just a quick break from your programming so I can give you a little information about Masterpiece. They are the masters at removing toxins and heavy metals and aluminum and microplastics out of your bloodstream, out of your body. We are being bombarded with this crap from all over the place, and we need to get it out of our bodies. You are more susceptible to every disease imaginable when that's in your bloodstream. And I like Masterpiece. That's the company I endorse. Why? Because they're the only company out there that's actually doing trials to prove to you that their product works. It removes graphene oxide, it removes aluminum, it removes microplastics and all sorts of toxins. You can try yours today as well by going to sarahwestall.com under shop or with the link below.
Well, after the DODIG gave our names to the FBI as a potential leaker of the New York Times article about a warrantless surveillance in December of 2005, I think it was. Well, after that, they tapped my phone in early 2006. I had evidence of that from other sources, from their affidavit and so on. And then in July of 2007, they raided us. All four of us who signed the affidavit to the DODIG, which was what we're supposed to do and required to do by regulation. If we see fraud, waste, and abuse, we're supposed to report it to the DODIG, which we did. And following the regulations, and because of that, they raided us. Well, NSA didn't like us either. They wanted to stop us also because they took our IP that we were developing in-house, and then they outsourced it to two guys from Stanford, who eventually formed Google. Right? And we have the date and time and when that happened, and we could see the transition when we showed how much was out there. It avalanched, and the whole system was about to bust, and they said we had to shut off our input. And so we did.
Okay, but then she was asking about the targeting.
Yeah, but we'll get back.
Yeah.
But
Because
No, this is good information, though. Well, and
after that,
and those people were the people who started Google, which is interesting because Google is now
two guys from Stanford, yeah, and they funded them.
Surveillance. Yeah.
They funded them, but for us, they tried to attack us internally and shut us down. That's because they wanted commercial companies doing all this data collection for them so they could get blamed and not NSA.
That's
so that's
right.
what they did. That's the way they did it. And they didn't want us doing anything, so they had to kill us, okay?
Okay, but regarding the targeting.
And after that,
this is really interesting. No, because they're shifting things to commercial and then claiming that a commercial company can do anything they want. This is the strategy so that the government can hide behind their behavior and get away with it. That's what we're walking. And then you got all these normies fighting for them, saying it's private rights, it's corporate rights, when really it's the government strategy in the beginning. But go ahead.
And that's Palantir too.
Okay, that's the PSYOP because it's shifting it to Palantir so that they can get away with all this crap. That makes so much sense. Okay, keep going.
And now here comes the targeting. After our raid, a little less than a year later, I started having infections, and that's why I lost my legs below the knee. I've had 12 separate flesh-eating bacteria infections, and I didn't get rid of them until Katherine came along, put locks on the doors and everything, security.
Just so that people understand, just a moment, because people didn't quite understand what happened, because your targeting started before that. When Bill's IP was stolen in 98, Google was founded in September, but in October, Bill and his wife survived an assassination attempt where they were T-boned by a car in a little local community that has a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. So let's start with that, right? So they tried to kill Bill with that. You had the fake raid of the FBI in 2007 on completely made up charges because they knew that Bill and his colleagues weren't the source of the news. The real source was Thomas Tabb in Justice Department, right? They knew all that. They knew all that. Yeah. But a couple of months after the FBI raid, Bill started having flesh-eating bacterial infections. That's already rare. We get one. Now, Bill then lost his lower leg in 2010, one of these, that kept happening. Then he lost his second lower leg in 2013, right? And then he went on to have another, 10 flesh-eating bacterial infections, with a total of 12. That is statistically impossible.
They
Right.
kept me in the hospital for quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, it's just not impossible unless he was given those bacterial infections by
That's
someone.
exactly what a friend of mine who was in intelligence, military intelligence in Vietnam, he said that the first time that happened, he said they're targeting you with bioweapons.
Exactly. But the thing that everybody needs to
So-
know, and this is really relevant for every average Joe, they need to know that the FBI is coming into private homes at night all the time.
Called
This
sneak
is-
and peek.
But they are breaking in and they are injecting people with stuff. They are implanting them with microchips. People wake up with laser surgery scars. So after I've done with all the I've analyzed all the targeted individual cases, I said to Bill, listen, they are coming in at night and you're being injected with these pathogens, right? If, the actual infection kicking off would be time delayed, maybe a day or two. You would not think to look for an injection site. You might not even see it if they use this thin needle. So what we did is we bolted our bedroom from the inside completely like Fort Knox, and the infection stopped for the first
Wow.
time in years. Yes.
Wow.
That makes
Well,
sense.
what's wrong with these people how can they make what they make on an FBI salary and do these kinds of things? What's wrong with that?
Well, I think it's people are groomed, and one of the side effects of this mass surveillance, when you can really watch people as they grow up as children. I mean, now we have 24 years of continuous mass surveillance. So a child born under mass surveillance, you can watch their entire young adulthood as they're coming online, and you can pre-select psychopaths. You can pre-select people with brain degeneracies and then actively recruit them. And I have indication that is precisely what they do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. And they know the psychological profile. The other, the flip side of all this negative stuff is that we can identify who the sick people are, and as they're growing up, and divert it when they're young and help them become healthy human beings. I mean, we could do so much good with this if we had people who actually cared, who were running
Had
things.
integrity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-technology. None of us are. That's what our whole career has been. And it's like, wow, there's so much good we could get out of this if they chose to. Instead, they're using it for bad. We could heal the world instead of using it to abuse the world.
Yeah, but it's human nature to really seek power, control, and money.
There's enough.
That's human nature.
That is the default setting, but systems analysis also gives us exactly this outcome. Because when you think about it, you have any sort of technology and you think about the energy, sophistication, and intelligence involved to run it properly, to do an investigation, it's very, very high. So you have one mode of operating that technology that has very little monetary return. You just prevent that stuff from happening, but you're not making an active profit. So that is the highest energy level that you would have to attain for that business plan. Below that, there is it may be endless, but certainly countless number of business plans where you can use the same technology for good with a lot less brain, a lot more ruthlessness, a lot more sadistic or voyeuristic cashback, in addition to the profit. So systems analysis and the laws of systems physics say that those business plans will be much more predominant. So it will be 99% blackmail operations, spying, perving operations, voyeuristic trash, and maybe once in a million years it might be used for good.
Okay, but I know you've thought about this a lot. How do we overcome that? How do we say, okay, we have these tools that we could turn into a paradise. I mean, honestly, in the sense of helping
But you got to
people
root out
be
the
better.
crap.
How do we get that to happen? How do we?
Well, that's what we suggested in ways to do that. And it gets back to the problem. The point is that collecting all the data not only gets them power over everybody, but it also captures everything that they're doing criminally and all their activity related to that. So in the data already is the ways and means to get all of them out.
It is, I know.
So the point is, how do you do that? Well, you do that by starting with social networking, and then you build that by investigating the content that they've also collected. They told you all along they're not collecting content, but that's a lie. They've been doing it all along. And it even goes back even before 9/11 on a lesser base, but we're still doing it.
Well, I
That's
think
right.
you're really diving down the implementation track
Right.
because that's how Bill's mind works. He has the full solution already in place. The real key for the average American and the average taxpayer to understand is that solving the problem would be very much like solving the border problem. Remember the time when they were saying, oh, but there are 15 million illegal immigrants. It is physically impossible to remove them all. It's physically impossible to secure the border. Remember those things when they said,
Yep.
oh, but it's hundreds of miles. You just can't do it. And then you bring in Tom Homan and boom, a month later, it's done.
They can do it. Yeah.
And so it's exactly the same thing with here. And this is why people need to understand the time scale that's involved. Thin Thread identified your child abusers for good in moments. You spend the rest of the year just picking them up, okay? Running the court cases. The same can be done with the drug trafficking, with any sort of
That's
organization.
right.
But what all you need is an actual organization that is insulated from the FBI because they are the ones doing it right now. You need to have a little organization. And the proposal that we had was to have a whistleblower organization with really the best investigators who would be operating like the immune system. So if you think about the solution that nature came up with, you have your organs in the body, the different organs, the heart and the liver and so on, that you have the immune system that can go in everywhere and has basically supreme power to eject pathogens and toxins and clear them out.
Also cancer too.
And cancerous growth.
You carve the stuff out. Okay, so now how do we get past, and I have some answer, I've been thinking about this for a while, but I want to hear what your thoughts are. How do we get past the infrastructure, like Arizona? I've had people on and whistleblowers on talking about how, not just Arizona, but Arizona, we use it as an example of how their monetary system is so entwined in the drug trafficking and money laundering and all these things that they believe the entire economy will collapse once you clean that up.
Now,
I think there's solutions for this, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that that's not relevant anyway. I mean, you follow the law. You have the law, you implement the law, you look for people violating the law. They're easy to find. You find them and you put them in jail or fire them.
Yeah.
The point is we have a president who can say you're fired.
We don't have to, the system doesn't have to collapse because what they have to do is get ahead of that. They print money, they divert money, they build up the system and incent legal activities where people flourish and we develop things. There are other, and so they have to divert it to that. You might have to do an exerted effort to make sure things don't collapse as you're changing things out and promoting different industries. But there's methods to doing it. You just need really good business people to do it. Go ahead.
Actually, yeah, there is. I like Bill Still's precedent. He says go back to the Civil War. Lincoln, he issued his own currency and didn't have a Federal Reserve. It got that out of the way. He said this is the currency for the United States, and they printed it themselves. The United States government printed. So there was no loan, no interest, nothing to pay on that. We just put more money and use it. So that's a solution for now. We could get rid of the Federal Reserve and just print U.S. dollars.
That's the monetary solution. But I was thinking about this specific, yes, it's a very good one, actually. But the specific question of how do you wean an economy off the drugs? Well, there's a precedent. I think it was Venezuela. I hope I get this right, where they did just that. And this new president came in and he was told exactly this thing, like we can't stop the drug trade. We all live off it, right? And he said it's just that when you change an economy, there is a little transitory period, but because every unit, every individual switches and swaps and, changes direction themselves, you don't have to do it top down. Everybody just adjusts. At the moment, the laws of economic supply, people respond to incentives. If there's a huge incentive to be in the drug trade, he said a young man gets up in the morning and he could work on farmland and really sweat, or he could, be selling drugs. Well, he's going to be selling drugs. As soon as selling drugs is more dangerous or more onerous than working on the farm, he will go back and work on the farm. He will do it overnight. It's not a big switch. So this is all just nonsense. This is
But
not
that's
how-
what's great, that we have examples around the world that we can, Venezuela did it. We can point to something, say, this is how we can do it. And we can get creative and do other things. You get the good business people in, incent with different opportunities, because there's a lot of areas where humanity needs to go to thrive
Yeah.
that we're not taking advantage of. You start incenting that. It works, people. They just have to do it.
Yeah, can I give you an example of
Yeah.
of this, of how you can at least isolate things and get them out of the system? I was in 2006, I had a subcontract. I was working for Customs and Border Protection, looking at imports and exports and companies around the world. And from a BIS tip on a company, we went to Google at home and looked up, used what I call the shared attribute technique, looking up things that shared the same post office box or the same phone number, fax number, or address. And when you did that, and we did it on a website that had all of the Iranian companies in Dubai, Arab Emirates, outside of the restrictions of Iran. You know, so they were outside of Iran. They were in Arab Emirates, so they didn't have all the restrictions of ordering things. What they were doing was ordering all the parts necessary to make up an IED to send up and use against our troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. So when we did that, then this people added all that stuff to the tip-off around the world, saying, "Don't do business with these people, or they're doing this. They're building IEDs for them." But you wouldn't have seen it because there were like 8 or 9 different company names. If you looked at any one company name, which is the way CBP was doing it, you only saw one part for an IED. Okay, so that's an innocent operation. They're just doing this, you know? And you looked at each of them, and that was true for each of them individually because you only look at their names. But if you look at their shared attributes, you pull them all together and say, well, the aggregate is really what they're doing. And then you see the IED that they're doing. And so we said, okay, here it is. And these are all the company names that are involved in that. And it's more than you had in here. And we gave it to CBP, and the Bureau of Industrial Security published it and said, don't do business with these people because this is what they're doing. And when they did that, of course, the Iranians found out about it. And they said, okay, you can't use these names anymore. So you changed all the names, right? And when they did that, they followed the same technique, shared attribute, and we got them right away. Here's the new names for the companies you just notified the world you were doing this bad business. So when we gave them the names, they never published it. Okay, so I don't know why, because I don't know if they even graded them or anything, but they didn't seem to react to it. But the point was, not only did that fall out, but 57 other activities fell out too. That said, here's groups of companies in Dubai that are Iranian doing business that looks like they're smuggling something. Could be weapons, could be in anything, you know, or doing business illegally, trying to skirt international law and so on. But they didn't investigate any of that. And I went through with the proposal in 2006 to Customs and Border Protection because I looked at their data and I could find the same kind of property there. So I said, okay, I looked at a sample of your data and here's what I came up with so I can estimate what's in your database. I had hundreds of millions of records. And from that, I could estimate that on our first run of the program, we would get 40,000 targets to look at. Just the first run, 40,000. That was my estimate based on assumed uniform distribution through the network, or through the database, you know, just the size of it, giving them an idea. And they said, we only have 2 analysts. We can't handle that, so we're not doing it. I said, wait a minute. What we're doing is finding companies that are involved in smuggling of illegal activity. So what you have to do, we'll be pointing all the port of entry inspectors to these packages coming in. Go to this container, that package, that company, look in and inspect it. You know, you have thousands of people at these ports of entry. They still didn't do it.
Okay, but
So basically, they threw out a technique that could have solved the smuggling worldwide, and they didn't take advantage.
It's because too many people who are in positions of power are involved.
Yeah.
And they benefited. So I've got several comments to make. If I please make it eject. So a couple of important things to note about this example here. Bill did the work to identify the IED, what's it called, improvised explosive devices that were mostly used in Iraq and places like that when the US Army was deployed. You found this network using only Google, not NSA databases.
And it's a bad query, but we had to work through it.
Yeah, but anyway, you use just the internet.
Right.
And you found these companies building IUDs. Now, as you just explained, you reported it to Customs and Border Protection, and they sent out a note that, these companies should be sanctioned.
They
right?
also told us we're great Americans with money.
Yeah, I know. But the point is, the second time around, when you identified 40,000 targets, they refused to do it. Now, why would they possibly do that? Well, you don't want to unmask the whole system if you want to keep the war going. And you can't keep the war going if it looks like you have just finished off the other side. So the other side has to be able to produce these IEDs and give you kind of blowback to keep the war going and make it terrifying.
But do you think that the bad guys have too much power now where everything's collapsing on itself? Because the good people are suffering and the average people who probably don't even know what's going on are suffering so much now. They're covering up how much people are actually suffering.
Yeah.
That the whole system is starting to collapse on itself.
Well, it's not really collapsing, it's crystallizing out. That's the real problem. And
what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
What I mean by that is that we're dealing with a phase transition. So this organized crime cartel has been living with us for hundreds of years, but it has gradually gained power. Now, with the computing power it has, and this is not even counting AI, it has such overpowering weapons.
That's right.
And the war is almost lost. It really, Trump and his endeavors are the last stop.
Yeah.
What I mean with crystallizing out is that after that, if you think about the communist system, they had so much power over the population. My family and I and everybody we knew in communist Romania completely disagreed with the system. There was nothing we could do because anybody who tried was murdered.
Yep.
So crystallizing out means the system settles into complete subjugation and the people in power remain in power and there's nothing you can do. So if it's an evil system, you settle for decades, maybe your entire life into an evil system, like North Korea or like the Eastern Bloc was under communism, right?
Yeah, but it did fall in Romania.
It did not fall. In Romania, it was transitioned by British intelligence. It was the Western intelligence agencies had a psyop where they killed the Romanian dictator. The entire revolution was crisis actors and hired miners who held up signs, even
that
though they
makes
were
sense,
illiterate.
unfortunately.
The whole thing was staged because it was part of an asset stripping operation. And if you looked at it, the entire society was bled dry, and then Western companies came in and bought it all up. So it was a very carefully staged managed situation. The same thing happened in Russia, the rape of Russia that's known in the 1990s. So really, when you zoom out and you study this organized crime cartel, it's working in asset stripping cycles. It goes around the world and asset strips countries. It has done Asia, Latin America, and now the Western world is ripe for picking, right? And the symbol that they use is the snake that bites its own tail. That's the symbol of eternal revolution. So you go and F up this country, and then you let it gain, wealth again, and then you F it up again. And meanwhile, you're going and cycling through other countries. You can see the same business plan. If you think in terms of business plans, all this becomes very clear.
Everything's about business.
Yeah, it is. But the money flows go to the very same corporations, and as soon as you do that, everything will become clear. One thing that really helped me understand how the system works is just to think in terms of systems, not countries anymore, just businesses, governments, they are systems. Now, one of the things that you need to know is that when it comes to organized crime, so organized crime will always outgrow a natural economy because organized crime is not taxed, so it grows by the taxation rate. If you have two companies, one is organized crime, one is a legitimate company, the company that doesn't pay tax will grow by the amount of tax.
Well, it doesn't follow rules either. It's not hampered by rules.
Exactly. And the
or money. Yeah.
So before you know it, there's a monopoly on crime. One crime ring is going to win out over everybody else. And when you look through history, who was breaking in the biggest amount of money and the crime ball? Actually, it's the Vatican crime cartel.
Well, then how do we break down that crime? How do we break that crime syndicate up? Do good people have to stealth? Is it a stealth weapon? How do we do it?
Well, because we can't do anything in stealth anymore because of the NSA stealth surveillance, mass surveillance of everything. The most,
Gosh, this is the word. I haven't had this bad of internet or connection. I have no weather issues here. This is the
yeah,
worst it's been ever for me.
yeah, same here. And it's entirely because they're sitting on the line. But the point that people need to understand is that cleaning all this up is extremely fast because the number of people on planet Earth seem overwhelming to an individual, but they are absolutely trivial. The computer programs scanning everybody and finding the criminals. And once you found them, it's done.
We
Because
just need a group of people who are committed to doing it, right? I mean, you just got to
exactly.
commit yourself to doing it, and we can do it.
We can do it. And in fact, as Bill has demonstrated, the NSA databases would be nice for access. You can do it in moments using Bitrate. It's not necessary. We can even do it with Google. And it's not being murdered because so far, all these investigators, you know a couple who died, right? I know a handful who died. And the thing is, the real investigators are being taken out, and the fake investigators who come up with these bullshit reports like we found 200 child abusers in a week using the FBI, they are being promoted.
That's what's happening. And it's just like the real investigator or the real journalists are being suppressed. And if you're not, you might not be part of some deep state, but you're not really doing good, the real work, but you're entertaining, you'll be promoted. And yeah. And so it's just a bunch of garbage. And it's hard, like with this Epstein stuff that came out. I was like so disgusted because all the hard work we've done, and then now it's just a big circus of everybody trying to take advantage of the popularity of it and get clicks and get visibility. Meanwhile, those of us who've done real good hard work are censored. And it's like the people talk about being an inverted world. That's what it feels like. It's like those of us who are really trying to be good are censored and held back. We're just trying to be good people, trying to help people, trying to do good work, and we're being shut down. And I know you feel that too. It's just
Actually, I can point you to something in 2016 when I first explained everything. It was mostly about deep capture. How does deep capture come about? And what people need to understand is that everything we're observing is following the law. Very little work in it. Now, what you're describing, I have a video on it. It's called a system inversion. So when you have deep capture and criminals take over the leadership of an organization or country, whatever, they start populating the upper management with the criminal bastards who will do their bidding and sack people who are good or just promote them down or never let them, go up the scale. So what you end up with is that the scum is at the top and the very best people are the most
abused. Yep.
The system fills it out gradually over time. It is entirely predictable. But what the average person needs to do is just turn it around in their head and say, well, when we have these sort of problems, it's direct proof of deep capture. When the FBI comes out and work for a week and only produces 200 child abusers, which is probably a lot less than would be just visiting one pedophile site, right? You take that not to be a point of frustration. You take it to be smoking gun evidence for deep capture of the FBI, and you say, sorry, the leadership is no good. They basically produced utter complete trash, right? Now, with Cash and Bongino, I have this 3 strikes and you're out rule, and that was their 3rd strike, because they also claimed that Thomas Crooks acted alone. First of all, the guy on the roof was not Thomas Crooks. Second of all, I produced evidence within 12 hours that he didn't act alone, right? So that's strike number 1. Strike number 2 is claiming that Epstein killed himself. Excuse me. And then you produce some bullshit video from an empty corridor. I mean, come on, it's laughable. And strike number 3 is to come up with these 200 child abusers. It's just nonsense. So these people, Ash might be a good person at heart, but he is incompetent. So just trying to be doing good is a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient to succeed.
Well, do you think he's blackmailed and coerced himself? Because some of the stuff is irrational and doesn't make sense. When I tell people is when the behavior and the decisions are irrational, there's some kind of coercion or blackmail involved. Because it just,
And smoking gun evidence for me personally was that interview they did with Maria Bartiromo, where both Cash and Bongino looked like hostages. They looked terrified in the interview. They had high stress level. Their body language was stressed. And
That's my point.
especially Cash had open signs of lying when he said, oh, well, I've been to these places. I know what it looks like. And his eye movements and facial expressions say, it's a lie. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Never
Well,
seen it.
that's what it was too obvious. That's what tells me that they were blackmailed or there's coercion or they're covering up for something they think. The only benefit of a doubt is that they're covering up for some other bigger operation. That's the
No.
only thing I know.
But
Other than
that's
that,
the
I
stuff.
know I'm not that naive, but I'm just saying.
No, because, and I tell you why, because we're running out of time.
That
The
I
deep
agree with
state,
you. I agree
you know,
with you.
it's like there is no bigger operation. At some point from day one, you have to hit because we are running out of time. Their power over us is such that if you wait any longer, oh gosh.
It's really bad, the internet. You know what? Well, I think this interview has been really good. There's so many insightful things out of it. This is just a wonderful, timely conversation that I think we all wanted to have. You could tell we're very passionate, and it was so good. So I am so thankful that you came on, you and Bill. I hope we can get you back in a short amount of time.
Sorry, I didn't understand any of
I'm
the
so
stuff you
sorry.
said.
Oh, I was saying that this has just been a wonderful conversation. You can tell we're all really passionate about this. We've all wanted to talk about these things. I need to have you back on a regular basis to get this information out there. Very few people in the world that have the insight that you have and that Bill has that we can really share with people and help them understand what's going on.
We need to
And
work with solutions. They are very
we have to.
Let's talk about those.
We have to work on solutions because it's really daunting. I think people are wanting to give up, and we can't give up. There's too much on the line to give up, don't you think?
Yes. You know, and on a positive note to people, the current Trump administration, for all their shortcomings, are the best shot we have, and the best shot we had in over 100 years. So it's a now or never. We can't give up. And also, I'm not going to give up on them just a few months into the new administration.
No way. Yeah. So we're going to have to bring this to an end because the internet's just too bad. And we're going to have to. Yeah, I'm sorry. The internet's just too unstable right now for some reason. Well, we know why. And so I'm going to have you back in a reasonable amount of time to do this again. And thank you and thank Bill so much for coming on the program. And I just hope you take care and, stay strong. And thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it.